there, my name's May Matney, and this is my theater history assignment for Theater 100. This is Theater Through the Years. So starting with Greek theater, it took place in the Western world, and the first known Greek play was written in the 6th century BC, and that was the Thespis play. But most other Greek plays were made in the 8th century. Comedy, tragedy, and satire plays were among the popular themes of the Greek theater. We know this information due to the plays that were written by many famous playwrights around this time. I offered some examples right there, but their names are a little bit hard for me to say right now. But one thing that made Greek theater stand out was the importance that they placed on the chorus, which was a very important part for them because it showed what the director wanted the audience to feel. So in that moment they would show a suspense, or they would gasp, or they would do something that would convey mood and meaning of what the director wanted the audience to be feeling. Nowadays the audience doesn't get that very much because the chorus now kind of takes a background spot in a lot of the plays in today's time. Some popular plays during this time were Oedipus the King, which is very popular, still used today, and Antigone, that were both written by the Greek writer Sophocles, and Medea, written by Euripides. Those were both popular during this time. Roman theater was very similar to Greek theater because the first play was written by actually a Greek immigrant by the name of Livius Andronicus, I think, but it wasn't written there until 240 BCE, much later than the other one, than in Greek theater, I believe. It was also birthed in the Western world because they were so close to Greek theater. And because the first play was written by the Greek man, their plays were extremely familiar to the Greeks. They shared the same kind of structures, genres, and the same plots as a lot of the plays in Greek culture. What set them apart from their close counterparts was that they did not hold the chorus in such a high regard, and that's kind of where the chorus has kind of gone downhill from there, is where they kind of lost touch of that chorus and the mood that it sets. They removed them completely from their comedic plays. They kind of put it in the background in their dramatic or tragedy plays. Some famous playwrights from this time were Plautus, Terence, and Seneca, and Catullus by Plautus was a particularly popular play in this era, and there's a picture of that play there. But because of the Romans' preferred variety, they soon lost interest in their tragedies and comedies, and the Roman dramas then became more of the inspiration for their upcoming time periods. Then here in the medieval ages, they began in Europe after the fall of the Roman Empire. And Catholicism was deeply intertwined into their culture and into basically everything that they did in this era. So it influenced a lot of their arts, including theater. They also were in paintings and music and all of the other various arts that goes with it. Due to their rich religious background, many plays were written anonymously because they wanted to give all their glory to God rather than take individual credit. They believed that God was the greater purpose, and they felt guilty taking any pleasure or gratitude or anything that they would get from those plays, and wanted to give it all to God. They focused mainly on religious plays that they called cycle or mystery plays, and rather than writing about other, writing other genres. An example of these plays would be Quem Quiritus Trope, a play about three Marys who visit the tomb of Jesus, as well as a shepherd's play about a family in a similar situation when Joseph and Mary were having baby Jesus. Morality and miracle plays also became very popular at this time because they were also very based on religion. And many of these miracle plays were actually written by a female dramatist, which is one of the first times that I've at least seen a female playwright. one of the earliest times at least, and I can't say her name, but there she is, who was the first well-known playwright of the post-classical era, actually. These religious plays then proved controversial at the end, and laws soon were made against them by, I think, Queen Elizabeth, who was the first who kind of outlawed them because they were causing such a controversy. But this kind of paved the way for the Golden Ages. The Italian Renaissance then is a historical time period that took place in 1580 to 1680 and began in Italy. This time period came up with several different genres, including autos sacramentales, religious and morality plays, as mentioned in the previous era, comedias, full-length secular dramas, comedias meaning comedies, and cloak and sword plays, which I believe in the text was referred to in its Spanish form, but I just decided to leave it in English for this project. Loas, that were performed like prologues, and intermisses, kind of like intermission, that were performed between the comedy acts. The development of the printing press actually was very important in this time period and allowed for the rapid development in promoting a freer exchange between thoughts and ideas and gave them more availability to exchange those. Theater then became much more professional, though, because it had lost the support from the church as well as the communal functions that had helped it progress in the later time periods or earlier time periods. Queen Elizabeth of England then brought the stability and greatness along with her through the Italian Renaissance that allowed it to further the English Renaissance and allowed William Shakespeare to emerge in this time period, which leads us to the English Renaissance. This Renaissance took place around the time of Queen Elizabeth's reign in 1550 to 1603. They kind of nicknamed this era the Elizabethan England because of this, actually. And many new playwrights arose out of this time period. But the most well-known is William Shakespeare, of course, having written some famous works like Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet, Midsummer Night's Dream, all of those wonderful plays that he's written, all arose from this time period that has kind of the awakening of theater and everything else. Some other artists, though, from this time were Thomas Kyd and Christopher Marlowe. Kyd introduced the revenge tragedy, actually, to the scene after writing the Spanish tragedy. And Marlowe perfected the blank verse writing of the Jew of Malta and Edward II. He wrote both of those. Marlowe also created the concept of complex characters, which also helped in William Shakespeare's writing. And he came up with episodic plots. Shakespeare is described as a man of theater because he has written about 40 plays as well as acting and producing and a lot of his plays, actually. Which takes us to French neoclassicism. And this neoclassicism took over in the late 17th century and was based on verisimilitude and decorum, which consisted of 3 genres, 3 unities, and a 5-act form with a 2-fold purpose. Verisimilitude meant that the plays should only show the truth, like the people's truth. And it was very similar, actually, to Shakespeare's ideas when he was making his plays about human nature and looking into what made humans, honestly. So they took a lot from Shakespeare, or at least his ideas, or basic, ideas. But verisimilitude looked at the qualities of life and what applied to most humans. So it looked at what made them happy, what made them tick, everything. And their plays were divided into 3 genres: tragedy, comedy, and pastoral. The 2 most popular ones were more comedy and pastoral, though. The neoclassics also promoted the use of the three unities adapted from Aristotle in their plays. And they used time, place, and action. Those were the most important things to them. By the late 16th century, though, they began to implement, they started implementing the Roman playwright Seneca, who I had mentioned in one of the first slides, his ideas, and divided their plays into 5 acts. And one of the most popular playwrights of this time was Molière, who wrote the Misanthrope, which, by my knowing of at least Latin stem words, I believe has something to do with the human, because anthropology and everything like that. So it's something to do with human nature and human ideas and qualities of life. The English Restoration, then, this period took place after 1660 and finally brought the idea of allowing women on stage to life, which, being a woman, makes me very happy. But although this sounds like a step in the right direction, it kind of brought along the scenes of rape and the breeches roles that showed women who played female characters who dressed like men, which was interesting and was one of the more unfortunate parts in theater history, I believe. But it also kind of put women in an interesting position, because when they were playing the men, usually women of that time wore skirts, and when they dressed like men or whatever, they showed like their ankles and stuff like that. So it was showing women as kind of scandalous, and kind of started to objectify them a little bit. But anyways, it did kind of make some gains for them by putting them at least on the stage. So this era also introduced a popular form of comedy of manners, which are plays that were in this time period, and a lot of popular writers like William Wycherley and William Congreve Congreve wrote their plays in this kind of form, and it depicted aristocratic society with also some pop-ups of lesser characters showing in there. Although this time period borrowed a lot from different areas like neoclassicism and the Italian staging that they used, in the 18th century it brought other forms such as operas and pantomime to light in order to satisfy the very growing and ever-changing taste of the English, because you can never stay stagnant. You always have to have something new to bring to the table.